I spent 40 years raising my children, giving them everything they could ever need. I worked 3 jobs, put them through college, and helped them buy their first homes. But last month, my daughter Amanda told me she was taking me to lunch. Instead, she drove me to Pinecrest Meadows Retirement Community and checked me in without my consent. What she didn't know? I've been on the board of directors there for 15 years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Betty Smith. At 68, I never imagined I'd be sitting here telling you this story. For most of my life, I believed family meant everything, that the sacrifices parents make eventually come back as love and respect. I was wrong, at least about my daughter Amanda. I married young, just 22, to a man who promised me the world but delivered very little. Howard worked at the local paper mill, bringing home just enough to keep the lights on while I raised our children. We had 3, Amanda, my eldest, then the twins, David and Daniel. Life wasn't easy, but we managed. When Howard developed lung cancer from all those years breathing in chemicals at the mill, everything changed. He passed when Amanda was 16 and the boys were 13. Suddenly, I was alone with 3 teenagers and a mortgage I couldn't afford on my part-time librarian salary. I did what any mother would do. I found more work. Mornings at the library, afternoons waitressing at Cooper's Diner, and weekends cleaning houses for the wealthy families across town. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. "Mom, why do you have to work so much?" Amanda would complain whenever I missed one of her school events. Jessica's mom is always there for everything. Jessica's mom has a husband with a 6-figure income, sweetheart, I'd explain, trying not to let my exhaustion show. I'm doing my best. Despite everything, I managed to help all 3 children through college. Amanda studied business administration at State University. I remortgaged our family home to cover what her scholarships didn't. The twins both earned athletic scholarships, though I still worked extra shifts to cover their expenses. Those years nearly broke me, but seeing them graduate made every backache and missed meal worth it. Amanda married Richard Palmer straight out of college. He came from money, old money. His family owned half the commercial real estate in our county and weren't shy about flaunting it. From the start, they made it clear they thought Amanda had married down by being a Smith. At their wedding, Richard's mother Vivian cornered me by the bathroom. "We're so pleased Richard found someone with ambition," she said, eyeing my modest dress. Though it's a shame Amanda wasn't exposed to more cultural experiences growing up. We'll help with that, of course. I swallowed my pride and smiled. Amanda is smart and determined. She'll do well anywhere. Over the next decade, I watched my daughter transform. The kind, thoughtful girl who once helped me clip coupons at the kitchen table became a woman obsessed with appearances. Her clothes, her car, her house, everything had to project success. When she and Richard bought their 5-bedroom home in Oakwood Estates, she didn't invite me to the housewarming party. "It's just for Richard's business associates, Mom," she explained over the phone. "You wouldn't know anyone there." I later learned from David that my other children had been invited. When confronted, Amanda sighed. "Mom, you would have shown up in one of your thrift store outfits. It would have been embarrassing." Those words stung, but I buried the pain. My daughter and I loved her. If she needed time to figure out what truly mattered in life, I would give her that time. Meanwhile, I continued working hard, eventually becoming head librarian. I also joined the board of several community organizations, including Pinecrest Meadows Retirement Community. The position was unpaid, but I enjoyed giving back, especially after witnessing how poorly my own mother had been treated in her final years at a different facility. "Mrs. Smith, your insights have been invaluable," Jerome Washington, the executive director, told me after I'd proposed several improvements to the resident care protocols. Would you consider joining our board of directors? We need someone with your compassion and practical thinking. I accepted, though I kept it quiet from my children. They already thought I was overextending myself, and Amanda in particular would make comments about me slowing down whenever I mentioned my community work. At 65, I finally retired from the library, but kept my position on several boards. I had saved enough for a modest retirement and even had a small inheritance from my Aunt Mildred that I'd invested wisely over the years. Nothing that would impress Amanda's in-laws, certainly, but enough that I was comfortable and independent. Then, 3 years into my retirement, I fell and broke my hip while gardening. The recovery was difficult, and I needed help with daily tasks for several weeks. Amanda visited exactly twice during my 8-week recovery. The twins came regularly, but they lived 3 hours away and had young families of their own. "Mom, have you considered that maybe this house is too much for you now?" Amanda asked during her second visit. She was standing in my kitchen, her designer purse placed carefully away from the counter as if my home might soil it. "You're not getting any younger." "I'm managing fine," I told her. "Mrs. Perez from next door has been helping with groceries, and once physical therapy is done, I'll be back to normal." Amanda frowned. "Normal? Mom, you're almost 70. This isn't about your hip. It's about being realistic about your capabilities." I changed the subject, not wanting to argue. That night, after she left, I noticed several of my kitchen drawers had been opened and some papers moved on my desk. I thought little of it at the time. 3 weeks later, Amanda called. "Mom, I'm taking you to lunch on Thursday. Richard and I want to discuss some options for your future care." "That's not necessary," I said. "I'm doing much better now." "It wasn't a request, Mom. I'll pick you up at 11. That Thursday morning, I dressed carefully in my nicest blouse and slacks. I may not have had designer clothes like Amanda, but I took pride in my appearance. When her sleek SUV pulled into my driveway, I was ready with my purse and a sweater. "You look nice, Mom," Amanda said as I climbed in. It was the first compliment she'd given me in months. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Thank you, dear. Where are we meeting Richard?" She adjusted her sunglasses. "He's going to join us there. It's a new place just outside of town." As we drove, Amanda kept up a stream of chatter about her children's accomplishments. My grandkids were 16 and 14 now, busy with activities and rarely brought to visit. I listened politely, contributing the occasional, "That's wonderful," when appropriate. After about 20 minutes, I noticed we weren't heading toward any restaurants. In fact, we were driving toward the outskirts of town, past the shopping centers, and into the more rural area. "Amanda, where exactly are we going?" I asked. "It's a surprise," she said, not taking her eyes off the road. "Trust me, you'll understand when we get there." Another 10 minutes passed before she turned onto a tree-lined drive I recognized immediately. My heart sank as the elegant sign for Pinecrest Meadows Retirement Community came into view. "Amanda," I said carefully, "why are we at Pinecrest?" She parked the car and turned to me with an expression that was supposed to be compassionate, but didn't reach her eyes. "Mom, Richard and I have been talking, and we think it's time you had proper care. After your fall, it's clear you can't live alone anymore." "What?" I was genuinely shocked. "I've recovered almost completely. My doctor says I'm doing excellently for my age." "This isn't just about your hip," Amanda sighed, as if explaining something to a child. "It's about preventing the next accident. Besides, we've already handled everything. Your room is ready, and we've packed up the essentials from your house." "You've what?" My voice rose. "You went into my home and packed my things without asking me? Last weekend while you were at your book club, the movers are bringing your bedroom furniture and some personal items today. We've listed your house with Triple Crown Realty. The market is hot right now, so it should sell quickly." I sat there, stunned into silence. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated that I couldn't immediately form words. Amanda mistook my silence for resignation. "It's for the best, Mom. You'll be safer here, and Richard and I won't have to worry about you falling with no one around to help. The girls from my country club volunteer here sometimes, and they say it's the nicest facility in the county." "Did it occur to you to discuss this with me first?" I finally managed to ask. "We knew you'd resist," she said simply. "This way is easier for everyone." Easier for whom, exactly? I could feel anger rising in my chest. "You've sold my home without my consent and packed up my life without even telling me. That's not caring, Amanda. That's control." Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. "Don't be dramatic, Mom. The house was too big for you anyway, and the stairs were dangerous. Here, you'll have everything taken care of. 3 meals a day, activities, medical staff on call. It's like a permanent vacation." "A vacation I never asked for," I said quietly. "Well, it's done now," Amanda replied, reaching for her door handle. "Let's go inside and get you settled. Richard is meeting us in the director's office to sign the final paperwork." As we walked toward the entrance, I felt numb. 15 years on the board of this very facility, and now my daughter was checking me in like luggage at an airport. I knew the layout intimately, had helped design some of the newer wings, yet Amanda was guiding me as if I were a lost child. The receptionist looked up as we approached, and I saw the moment of recognition flash across her face. "Mrs. Smith, we weren't expecting you today. Is there a board meeting I missed on the calendar?" Amanda froze mid-step. "Board meeting?" I smiled at the young woman. "No, Tanya. No meeting today. Apparently, my daughter has arranged for me to become a resident here." Tanya's eyes widened. "A resident? But you're on the tour last month," I interrupted smoothly. "Yes, it was very informative. Is Jerome in his office today?" "Yes, ma'am. He's in a meeting with a Mr. Palmer right now, actually." "Perfect," I said. "That would be my son-in-law. We'll head right in." As we walked down the hallway, Amanda hissed, "You've been here before? You never mentioned touring retirement homes." "There's quite a lot I don't mention to you, dear," I replied calmly. "You're so busy with your important life, after all." We reached the director's office just as Jerome was shaking hands with Richard. Both men looked up as we entered. "Betty," Jerome exclaimed, genuine pleasure in his voice. "I didn't realize—" "Wait, are you related to Mr. Palmer?" "This is my mother-in-law," Richard said stiffly, clearly wondering how the director knew me. "Jerome," I said pleasantly. "It seems my daughter and son-in-law have decided I should become a resident here. Without consulting me, of course." Jerome's friendly expression faltered. "I don't understand. Why would you become a resident at a facility where you're on the board of directors?" The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop. Richard's face drained of color. Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. "Board of directors," she finally managed. "Yes, for 15 years now," I said, taking a seat across from Jerome's desk. "In fact, I believe I was part of the committee that hired you, wasn't I, Jerome?" He nodded, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "You were the chair of that committee, actually. Mrs. Smith has been instrumental in shaping our resident care policies," he explained to my dumbfounded daughter and son-in-law. But we've already sold her house," Richard sputtered. "The paperwork." "Actually," I interrupted, "you haven't sold anything. The house is in a living trust I established 10 years ago. You can't sell it without my signature on multiple documents, which I certainly haven't provided." Amanda's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you were on some board? We've been worried sick about you living alone." "Have you?" I asked mildly. Is that why you've visited me exactly twice in the 3 months since my fall? Is that why you've never once asked about my financial situation or my retirement plans before deciding to sell my home and institutionalize me? Jerome cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give you all some privacy. No need, Jerome, I said. I believe my daughter and son-in-law were just leaving, unless they'd like to explain to the full board why they attempted to admit one of its members as a resident without her consent. I imagine that would make for an interesting emergency meeting. Richard stood abruptly. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. Amanda, we should go. But the deposit, Amanda began, is not refundable, I finished for her. As clearly stated in the admissions paperwork you signed without my input, that's $15,000 you've just donated to Pinecrest Scholarship Fund for employees pursuing nursing degrees. How generous of you. My daughter looked like she might explode. You can't be serious. Mom, this is ridiculous. We were trying to help you. No, I said firmly, looking her directly in the eyes. You were trying to solve what you saw as the problem of your aging mother in the way most convenient for you. You didn't ask what I wanted or needed. You didn't respect me enough to include me in decisions about my own life. I turned to Jerome. Since I'm here, perhaps we could review the quarterly budget reports. I noticed some discrepancies in the maintenance allocations that I wanted to discuss. Jerome, bless him, caught on immediately. Of course, Betty. I have those files right. Here. As he pulled out a folder, I glanced back at Amanda and Richard. You can see yourselves out. And Amanda? Don't bother coming to my house again unless you're prepared to apologize. The security system I had installed last month will alert me if anyone enters without my code. Richard practically dragged Amanda from the room. Through the partially open door, I could hear her furious whispers. How are we supposed to know? She never tells us anything important. After they left, Jerome put down the folder and looked at me with concern. Betty, are you all right? That was intense. I'm fine, I said, though my hands were shaking slightly. Just disappointed. And angry, if I'm being honest. Understandably so, he replied. What will you do now? I took a deep breath. First, I'm going to make sure my house is secure and that they haven't removed anything. Then, I'm going to call my lawyer and ensure all my affairs are properly protected. And finally, I'm going to continue living my life on my terms. Jerome nodded. For what it's worth, I think you handled that with remarkable grace. Years of practice, I said with a small smile. Now, about those budget discrepancies. When I returned home that afternoon, Jerome kindly drove me. I found my front door unlocked and several boxes stacked in the hallway. A quick inventory confirmed they contained mostly clothes and some personal items, photos, books, a few keepsakes. Nothing irreplaceable had been removed yet. I called a locksmith immediately and had all the locks changed. Then I contacted my attorney, explained the situation, and asked him to send a formal cease and desist letter to Amanda and Richard regarding any attempts to sell my property or remove my belongings. That evening, as I sat on my back porch watching the sunset with a glass of wine, my phone rang continuously. Amanda, then Richard, then Amanda again. I let each call go to voicemail. Eventually, a text came through. Mom, you embarrassed us in front of the director. We were trying to do what's best for you. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my sons and explained what had happened. Their outrage on my behalf was both validating and heartwarming. Do you want me to come stay with you for a few days, Mom? David offered. I can work remotely. That's not necessary, honey, but thank you, I assured him. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, despite what your sister believes. The next morning, Amanda appeared on my doorstep, her expensive car parked prominently in my driveway. When she rang the bell, I watched her through the security camera I'd had installed after my fall, another detail I hadn't shared with her. Mom, I know you're in there, she called out. We need to talk about yesterday. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Yes? She seemed taken aback by my coolness. Can I come in? I prefer not to have people in my home who might be cataloging my possessions for removal, I said evenly. Amanda flushed. That's not fair. We were trying to help. By selling my house without my knowledge? By packing up my belongings while I was out? By driving me to a retirement home under false pretenses? I raised an eyebrow. Interesting definition of help you have there. You didn't tell us you were on some board. How were we supposed to know you had connections there? Amanda, I said patiently, the fact that you didn't know about my position isn't the issue. The issue is that you made decisions about my life without including me in them. That stops now. She crossed her arms defensively. So what? You're just going to keep living here alone until something worse than a broken hip happens? What I'm going to do is live my life as I see fit. I'm not infirm, senile, or incapable. I'm a 68-year-old woman with a full life, multiple commitments, and the financial stability to support myself. Her eyes narrowed. Financial stability? On a librarian's pension? I sighed. Some things never changed. Amanda, not that it's any of your business, but I have investments, savings, and yes, even a modest inheritance from Aunt Mildred that I've managed carefully for years. I serve on 3 different boards, volunteer twice a week, and have a wider social circle than you might imagine. I am not lonely, bored, or in need of your management. But what if you fall again? What if? Then I'll use the medical alert system I've had installed, I interrupted. Or I'll call one of my neighbors who check on me regularly. Or I'll contact your brothers, who, unlike you, actually call me at least once a week without an agenda. That barb hit home. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, though whether from genuine emotion or frustration at not getting her way, I couldn't be sure. You've always liked the boys better, she muttered. No, I said firmly. I've always appreciated being treated with respect. Your brothers give me that. You and Richard see me as a problem to be solved. She wiped at her eyes. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you visited me without suggesting I change something about my life? When was the last time you invited me to your home for a reason other than to babysit? When was the last time you asked about my interests or activities, instead of telling me I should slow down? Amanda had no immediate response. In the silence, I continued. I want you to understand something clearly. I love you. You're my daughter and nothing will change that. But I do not trust you right now, and I won't allow you to manage my affairs or make decisions for me. So what? You're cutting me off? Her voice rose in indignation. No, I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. I straightened my shoulders. When you're ready to treat me as an autonomous adult worthy of respect, we can rebuild our relationship. Until then, I suggest you use that $15,000 non-refundable deposit as a reminder of what happens when you underestimate people. Mom, I have a board meeting to prepare for, I said, gently but firmly closing the door. Through the security camera, I watched her stand there for nearly a minute, shock evident in her posture. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car, phone already in hand, no doubt calling Richard to complain about her unreasonable mother. As I made myself a cup of tea, I felt no triumph, only sadness mixed with resolution. The relationship with my daughter was damaged, perhaps severely. But for the first time in years, I was asserting my own worth. If Amanda could learn from this experience, perhaps we had a chance at a healthier connection in the future. If not, well, I had a life to live, on my own terms. The next board meeting at Pinecrest was interesting, to say the least. Word had spread among the staff about my almost admission, and Jerome had been discreet but honest with the other board members about the situation. As I took my usual seat at the conference table, the board chair, Eleanor Winthrop, leaned over. Betty, I hear you had quite the experience with your family recently, she said quietly. News travels fast, I replied with a small smile. Are you all right? Genuine concern showed in her eyes. I'm better than all right, I told her. I'm finally standing up for myself. She patted my hand. Good for you. And if you need anything at all, you have friends here. That simple moment of solidarity meant more to me than Eleanor could know. It was a reminder that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about those who respect and value you for who you are. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter from Amanda and Richard's attorney, requesting a meeting to discuss family matters. I forwarded it to my own lawyer with a note. Please handle this. I'm busy living my life. And I was. Between my volunteer work, board responsibilities, book club, and a new Tai Chi class I'd joined for balance and strength, my calendar was fuller than it had been in years. My sons visited when they could, bringing my grandchildren who, far from being embarrassed by their ordinary grandmother, seemed to enjoy my stories and the cookies we baked together. One afternoon, while I was planting new flowers in my garden, a car pulled into my driveway. It was Amanda, alone this time. She sat in her vehicle for several minutes before finally emerging and approaching cautiously. Mom, she called from the sidewalk. Can we talk? I set down my trowel and removed my gardening gloves. That depends. Are you here as my daughter or as someone trying to manage my decline? She winced. I deserve that. Yes, I agreed. You do. Amanda took a deep breath. The boys told me what you said to them about how I've been treating you, and Richard's mother, of all people, read me the riot act about respecting elders when she heard what we tried to do. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Vivian Palmer defending me? Now there's an unexpected alliance. A ghost of a smile crossed Amanda's face. She said, and I quote, just because someone doesn't have our money doesn't mean they don't have their dignity. Coming from her, that was practically a philosophical revelation. Wonders never cease, I remarked. Mom, Amanda said, her voice softening. I was wrong. We were wrong. I got so caught up in what I thought was best that I didn't consider what you actually wanted or needed. I'm sorry. I studied her face, looking for signs of the calculating woman who had tried to institutionalize me without my consent. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. My daughter, vulnerable and genuine. That's a start, I said finally. But trust takes time to rebuild, and I need to know that you respect my autonomy. I do, she insisted. Or at least, I'm learning to, the way you handled everything. It was a wake-up call. You're not just my aging mother, you're Betty Smith, board member and apparently financially savvy investor. I patted the bench beside me. Sit down, Amanda. Let me tell you about the mother you never bothered to know. And so I did. I told her about the investment club I'd joined 20 years ago, about the small but steady growth of my portfolio. I shared stories about my work with Pinecrest and the other organizations where I volunteered. I described my weekly routines, my friends, my interests beyond being her mother. For the first time in years, Amanda truly listened. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across my garden, something shifted between us. Not a complete healing, but the beginning of a new understanding. I always saw you as just my mom, she admitted, the woman who worked too much and didn't fit in with Richard's family. I never thought about who you were beyond that. Most children don't, I said gently. But at some point, the relationship needs to mature. I'm not just your mother, Amanda. I'm a whole person with my own life. She nodded slowly. I'm starting to see that. As she prepared to leave, Amanda hesitated. Would you be willing to come to dinner next? Sunday? Just family, no pretenses. The kids miss you. I'd like that, I said. But Amanda? This is a new beginning. Don't waste it. After she drove away, I returned to my gardening, my hands working the soil as I reflected on the day's conversation. Perhaps there was hope for my relationship with Amanda after all. Not as the deferential mother she'd taken for granted, but as Betty Smith, woman, board member, investor, gardener, friend, and yes, mother too. Life doesn't always give us the family we want, but sometimes, if we're brave enough to stand our ground, we can help shape the family we need. It's never too late to demand respect, to set boundaries, to insist on being seen for who you truly are. At 68, I was finally learning that lesson, and teaching it to my daughter as well. The moment the door closed behind Amanda, I leaned against it and let out a long, shaky breath. My hands trembled as the full weight of what had just happened crashed over me. My own daughter, my firstborn, had tried to strip away my independence without a second thought. The casual cruelty of it stung worse than any physical pain I'd endured. I made my way to the kitchen and filled the kettle with water, needing the comforting ritual of preparing tea to steady myself. As the water heated, I gazed around my home, the home Amanda and Richard had nearly taken from me. The cozy living room with bookshelves I'd built with Howard before he got sick. The kitchen table where my children had done their homework, where we'd shared thousands of meals together. The garden visible through the window, where I'd planted something new every spring for 30 years. This wasn't just a house. It was the physical embodiment of my life's work, my sanctuary, my history. And they had been ready to sell it without my consent, as if my attachment to it meant nothing. The kettle whistled, jolting me from my thoughts. As I poured the steaming water over a chamomile tea bag, my phone rang again. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it and set the phone face down on the counter. I needed to think, to plan. The confrontation at Pinecrest had been satisfying in the moment, but I knew Amanda and Richard well enough to know they wouldn't simply accept defeat. They would regroup, strategize, and try again, perhaps with a different approach, but the same goal: taking control of my life and my assets. After finishing my tea, I called my attorney, Franklin Weiss. Franklin had been my lawyer since Howard's death, helping me navigate the complicated waters of widowhood and single parenthood. He'd assisted with setting up my trust and managing my financial affairs. If anyone could help me protect myself now, it was Franklin. "Betty," he greeted warmly when he came on the line. "How are you? It's been a while since we've spoken." "I'm afraid I need your help, Franklin," I said, then proceeded to detail the day's events, from Amanda's deceptive lunch invitation to the confrontation at Pinecrest. Franklin listened without interruption, though I could hear his pen scratching against paper as he took notes. "That's quite troubling," he said when I finished. "They have no legal right to sell your home or make medical decisions for you, without proper authorization. Have you signed any papers recently? Anything Amanda or Richard might have slipped in among other documents?" "No," I replied confidently. "I'm very careful about what I sign." "Good. And your mental faculties are clearly intact. You're active in the community, serving on boards, making sound financial decisions. There would be no grounds for them to petition for guardianship." "Guardianship?" The word sent a chill down my spine. Could they actually do that? "It would be extremely difficult under these circumstances," Franklin assured me. "But we should take precautions nonetheless. I'd like to update your advance directives and power of attorney designations just to be certain. Are you still comfortable with David as your healthcare proxy?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. Of my 3 children, David had always been the most level-headed and respectful of my wishes. And I'd like to remove Amanda from any decision-making capacity. "Understood. I'll draw up the paperwork and messenger it over for your signature tomorrow. In the meantime, I suggest you document everything. Keep a record of all communications with Amanda and Richard. If they try to enter your home again without permission, call the police." "That seems extreme," I murmured, though the boxes in my hallway were evidence enough of their willingness to overstep boundaries. Better safe than sorry, Betty. People can become surprisingly aggressive when money and property are involved, even family members. Especially family members. After hanging up with Franklin, I did exactly as he suggested. I created a detailed record of the day's events while they were fresh in my mind, including times, locations, and exact wording of conversations. I took photos of the boxes Amanda and Richard had packed and made a list of the contents. That evening, I received a text from Richard. Betty, what happened today was unfortunate. Amanda was only trying to help. Let's discuss this like reasonable adults. I can have my financial advisor meet with us to review your situation and present options. I forwarded the message to Franklin without responding. Next, I called my sons. David answered on the second ring. Mom, everything okay? You usually don't call this late. I hadn't even noticed the time. Nearly 10 p.m. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't realize how late it was. But no, everything is not okay. I need to tell you what happened today. As I recounted the story, David's initial concern transformed into outrage. They did what? Are you serious? Without even talking to you first? His voice rose with each question. That's elder abuse, Mom. It's illegal. Have you called the police? No, and I don't intend to, I said firmly. I've spoken with Franklin. He's handling the legal aspects, but I wanted you to know what's happening. And I paused, choosing my words carefully. I'd like to update my healthcare directive. I want you to be my proxy, not Amanda. Of course, Mom. Whatever you need. There was a brief silence before he asked, Do you want me to come stay with you for a few days? I can work remotely. Or you could come here. Mary and the kids would love to see you. His offer warmed my heart. That's not necessary right now, but thank you. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, despite what your sister believes. I know you are, Mom, but you shouldn't have to deal with this alone. After reassuring David that I was truly all right, I called Daniel next and repeated the story. His reaction mirrored his twins, shock followed by protective anger. I always knew Amanda was self-centered, but this is a whole new level, he said, disgust evident in his voice. She's been spending too much time with Richard's family. They've always looked down on us. This isn't about class differences, I corrected gently. It's about respect. Amanda doesn't respect me as an autonomous person. She sees me as a problem to be managed. And she thinks she's the one qualified to manage you. The same woman. Who called last month asking how to get spaghetti sauce stains out of white carpet? Daniel's attempt at humor was appreciated, even if the situation wasn't funny. We talked for a while longer, with Daniel offering similar support to David's. By the time I hung up, I felt fortified by the knowledge that not all my children saw me as a burden or an incompetent old woman. The next morning, I woke early, feeling oddly energized despite the emotional turmoil of the previous day. I dressed in my gardening clothes and headed out to continue the work Amanda's unwelcome visit had interrupted. The simple act of digging in the earth, nurturing new growth, had always been therapeutic for me. I was on my knees, transplanting daylilies, when I heard a car pull into my driveway. Glancing up, I saw a vehicle I didn't recognize, not Amanda's. Luxury SUV or Richard's sleek sports car, but a modest sedan. A moment later, Vivian Palmer, Richard's mother, emerged. Of all the people I might have expected to visit me after yesterday's confrontation, Vivian was at the bottom of the list. In the 20 years since Amanda had married Richard, Vivian had made it abundantly clear that she considered the Smiths beneath the Palmers. Our interactions had been minimal and cool at best, outright condescending at worst. I stood, brushing soil from my hands as Vivian approached, her tailored pantsuit and pearls absurdly formal for a morning visit to my modest neighborhood. "Betty?" she greeted, her tone clipped but not openly hostile. "May I speak with you?" "This is unexpected," I replied honestly. But yes, of course. Would you like to come inside? I can make coffee. No, thank you. This won't take long. She glanced around my garden, her expression unreadable. I heard about what happened yesterday. Richard called me, quite upset. I imagine he was, I said neutrally, waiting to see where this conversation was heading. Was she here to defend her son and my daughter? To try to convince me to reconsider their plan? Vivian's next words surprised me. What they did was unconscionable, completely lacking in basic human decency. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry? You heard me correctly, she said, meeting my eyes directly. I may have my opinions about various matters, but attempting to place you in a facility without your consent and trying to sell your home behind your back? That crosses every line of respectful behavior. I appreciate your saying so, I managed, still stunned by her support. Vivian sniffed. Don't mistake me. I'm not here to forge some new bond between us. But I am old enough to recognize that what Amanda and Richard tried to do could easily happen to me someday if I don't make my own boundaries clear. She reached into her handbag and withdrew an envelope, which she extended to me. This is the name and contact information for my personal attorney. She specializes in elder law and estate planning. She's quite ruthless when necessary. I've already spoken to her about your situation, and she's willing to meet with you if you'd like a second legal opinion beyond whatever counsel you currently employ. I accepted the envelope, touched by the gesture despite its clinical delivery. Thank you, Vivian. That's very thoughtful. It's practical, she corrected. Women our age need to protect ourselves, even from our own children when necessary. She hesitated, then added, I've also made it clear to Richard that I find his behavior in this matter reprehensible. He may be my son, but that doesn't mean I support everything he does. With that, she gave a curt nod and turned to leave, her posture as rigid as ever. At the edge of my garden, she paused and looked back. Your daylilies are quite lovely. I've never had much luck with them myself. Before I could respond, she was walking briskly back to her car, leaving me standing in my garden with soil-stained hands and an envelope containing the contact information for one of the city's most prestigious attorneys. Life, I reflected as I returned to my planting, never ceased to surprise. The messenger from Franklin's office arrived shortly after noon with the updated legal documents. I read through each one carefully before signing, taking comfort in the clear language that protected my autonomy. My right to make my own medical decisions, to control my own property, to live independently, all spelled out in irrefutable legal terms. By mid-afternoon, I had forwarded copies to David and Daniel, filed the originals in my home safe, and sent digital versions to Franklin for his records. I felt more secure, but the emotional wound of Amanda's betrayal remained raw. I was just considering what to prepare for dinner when my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Eleanor Winthrop from the Pinecrest board. I hope I'm not intruding, she said warmly when I opened the door. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you after yesterday's incident. Unlike Vivian's surprise visit, Eleanor's was welcome. Though our relationship had been primarily professional, I'd always appreciated her straightforward manner and genuine concern for the residents at Pinecrest. Not at all, I assured her. Please come in. I was just about to make some tea. As we settled in my living room with steaming mugs, Eleanor didn't waste time on pleasantries. Jerome told me the full story. I must say, Betty, I'm appalled at what your daughter and son-in-law attempted to do. So am I admitted. Though perhaps I shouldn't be. Amanda has been pushing me toward downsizing for years. I just never imagined she'd go this far. Eleanor nodded sympathetically. It's unfortunately common. We see it at Pinecrest more often than you might think. Families making decisions for their elderly relatives without proper consultation or consent. She sighed. That's why your work on the Resident Rights Committee has been so valuable. You've always advocated for maintaining dignity and autonomy, even in assisted living situations. We chatted for nearly an hour, with Eleanor providing both emotional support and practical advice based on her experiences as board chair. Before leaving, she extended an unexpected invitation. We're having a special meeting next week to discuss the new East Wing expansion. I know you've been passionate about creating more affordable units for middle-income seniors. Would you consider chairing the planning committee? Your perspective would be invaluable. The request caught me off guard. I'd always been an active board member, but I'd never chaired a major project committee before. Are you sure, Eleanor? That's a significant responsibility. Absolutely certain, she replied without hesitation. If recent events have proven anything, it's that you have a unique understanding of both the practical and emotional aspects of late-life transitions. Besides, she added with a smile, it might be good for you to have a substantial project to focus on right now. She was right, of course. Dwelling on Amanda's betrayal wouldn't help me move forward. Taking on a meaningful project, one that could potentially help others avoid the kind of situation I'd just experienced, seemed like the perfect antidote to my distress. I'd be honored, I told her. Thank you for thinking of me. After Eleanor left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, my relationship with my daughter was damaged, perhaps irreparably. Yes, I'd been forced to confront the painful reality that the child I'd sacrificed so much for saw me primarily as an inconvenience. But I still had value to offer the world. I still had work to do. That evening, I received a text from Amanda. Mom, please call me. We need to talk about what happened. Richard and I were only trying to help. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching innovative assisted living models from around the country, making notes for the planning committee I would soon be chairing. If Pinecrest was going to expand, I was determined to ensure it did. So with the utmost respect for resident dignity and independence, the very things Amanda and Richard had been willing to strip from me. The next morning, as I was enjoying my coffee on the back porch, the phone rang. It was Jerome from Pinecrest. Betty, I wanted to update you on something. Amanda and Richard Palmer came by yesterday afternoon, demanding a refund of their deposit. When I explained our no-refund policy, they became quite insistent. I'm sorry they put you in that position, I said, genuinely embarrassed by my daughter's behavior. No need to apologize. We handle difficult situations all the time. I could hear the smile in his voice. In fact, I found a creative solution. I offered to convert their deposit into a scholarship fund for staff pursuing nursing degrees, with a plaque acknowledging their generous donation. How did they respond? I asked, unable to suppress a smile of my own. Let's just say they were not enthusiastic about having their names permanently associated with Pinecrest, Jerome chuckled. But they agreed, if only to save face in front of the other staff present. After we hung up, I sat quietly, reflecting on the irony. Amanda and Richard had unwittingly contributed to the very institution they'd tried to use against me. Their attempt to control me had instead created an opportunity for others to grow and advance in their careers. Perhaps there was a lesson in that, how actions motivated by control often lead to unintended consequences. I decided to incorporate that philosophy into my approach to the new wing. Instead of designing spaces that prioritized efficiency and management, we would create environments that empowered residents, giving them as much control as possible over their daily lives. I spent the next few days immersed in research and preparation for the upcoming committee meeting. The work was engaging and meaningful, providing a welcome distraction from the family drama. By the time the meeting arrived, I had developed a comprehensive presentation outlining my vision for a new kind of senior living space, one that respected individual autonomy while providing necessary support. The committee members responded enthusiastically. Several of them had parents or grandparents in various living facilities and had witnessed firsthand the challenges of maintaining dignity while accepting help. My proposal for graduated levels of assistance, from independent apartments with subtle accessibility features to more supportive options that could be implemented as needed, resonated strongly. This is exactly what's missing in our current senior living landscape, one committee member remarked. Options that evolve with the person rather than forcing the person to relocate every time their needs change. By the end of the meeting, my proposal had been approved for further development, with a request for more detailed plans and budget projections. As chair, I would be coordinating these next steps, working closely with architects, healthcare professionals, and financial advisors to turn the vision into reality. As I drove home from Pinecrest, feeling energized by the positive response to my ideas, I realized something important had shifted within me. The hurt and anger I'd felt after Amanda's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but they were no longer dominating my emotional landscape. Instead, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for the allies who had emerged in this difficult time. Eleanor, Jerome, my sons, and, most surprisingly, Vivian Palmer. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed David's car, parked on the street. He was sitting on my front porch steps, a small cooler beside him. "David, what a surprise," I called as I got out of my car. "Is everything all right?" He stood to greet me with a warm hug. "Everything's fine, Mom. I had a meeting with a client in the area and thought I'd stop by. Mary sent dinner." He gestured to the cooler. "Her famous lasagna and some of that crusty garlic bread you like." The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought tears to my eyes. "That's so kind of her, and of you to deliver it." "It's not entirely selfless," he admitted with a grin. "I was hoping you might share it with me." We carried the food inside, and I set about warming it while David told me about his work, his kids' latest activities, and Mary's new position at the university. It was normal, comfortable conversation, exactly what I needed after the tension of recent days. As we sat down to eat, David's expression grew more serious. "How are you doing, Mom? Really?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm better than I expected to be. The situation with Amanda is painful, but it's also clarifying in a way. It's forced me to recognize patterns that have existed for years and take steps to protect myself." "And you're sure you don't want me to talk to her?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm sure," I said firmly. "This is between Amanda and me. She needs to understand that her behavior was unacceptable and that understanding won't come from you or Daniel intervening. It has to come from her." David nodded, though I could tell he wasn't entirely convinced. "Just know we're here for you, both Daniel and I. Whatever you need." After dinner, as we washed the dishes together, David mentioned casually, "By the way, Mary and I were thinking about taking the kids to the beach house for the 4th of July weekend. We'd love it if you'd join us." The beach house was a modest rental property on the coast that David's family visited every summer. I had joined them occasionally over the years, but had often declined, not wanting to intrude on their family time. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I wouldn't want to impose." David gave me a look that was half exasperation, half affection. "Mom, you could never impose. The kids adore you, and Mary and I enjoy your company. Plus," he added with a smile, "you're the only one who can convince Emily to wear sunscreen without an argument." I laughed, remembering my headstrong 14-year-old granddaughter's resistance to anything she perceived as parental control. Somehow, the same suggestion from Grandma was acceptable where Mom's instructions were not. "In that case, I accept. It will be nice to have something to look forward to." After David left, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between my relationships with my different children. With David and Daniel, there was mutual respect, genuine interest in each other's lives, and a comfortable balance of independence and connection. With Amanda, there had always been a tension. My desire to support, without controlling, clashing with her tendency to either distance herself or attempt to manage me. The next day, I had scheduled a meeting with Gabriela Torres, the attorney Vivian had recommended. Despite having Franklin handle my immediate legal needs, I was curious about what additional protections a specialist in elder law might suggest. Gabriela's office was in a historic building downtown, elegantly appointed without being ostentatious. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a direct gaze that inspired immediate confidence. "Mrs. Palmer explained your situation to me in general terms," she said once we were seated in her office. "But I'd like to hear it from you, if you don't mind." I recounted the events with Amanda and Richard, including the steps I'd already taken with Franklin to update my advance directives and power of attorney designations. Gabriela listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she nodded approvingly. "You've already taken good first steps, but there are additional protections we might want to consider." She outlined several options, including a more comprehensive trust structure that would make it even more difficult for anyone to access or control my assets without my express consent. She also suggested a geriatric care manager who could serve as an objective third party to assess my needs if questions about my capacity ever arose. "Think of it as insurance," she explained. "You don't expect your house to burn down, but you have homeowner's insurance just in case. Similarly, you don't expect to become incapacitated, but having these structures in place ensures your wishes will be respected if something does happen." Her approach was practical and empowering rather than fear-based, which I appreciated. By the end of our meeting, I had a clearer understanding of my options and a stronger sense of control over my future. As I left Gabriela's office, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the network of support that had materialized around me in the wake of Amanda's betrayal. Friends, colleagues, professionals, and even unexpected allies like Vivian, all demonstrating that community doesn't have to diminish with age but can actually expand and deepen. Walking to my car, I noticed a small cafe across the street with outdoor seating. On impulse, I decided to treat myself to lunch. As I sat enjoying a sandwich and watching the world go by, I realized I was experiencing something I hadn't felt in quite some time: contentment. Not happiness exactly. The situation with Amanda was still too raw for that, but a quieter, steadier emotion. A sense that despite the challenges, I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I needed to do. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was Eleanor. "Planning committee meeting confirmed for Tuesday, 10 a.m. The architectural firm is excited about your concepts. This is happening, Betty." I smiled, already mentally refining my ideas for the new wing. The betrayal that had been meant to diminish me had instead propelled me toward a new chapter of contribution and purpose. Whatever happened next with Amanda and Richard, I knew one thing for certain. I would face it on my own terms, with dignity intact and autonomy preserved. The Tuesday morning of the planning committee meeting dawned bright and clear. I dressed, with special care, selecting a cornflower blue blazer that David always said brought out my eyes. Professional but approachable, exactly the impression I wanted to convey as committee chair. As I drove to Pinecrest, I mentally reviewed my presentation points. The architectural firm had sent preliminary sketches based on our initial discussions, and I was eager to share them with the committee. My vision for the new wing incorporated design elements that subtly supported independence while providing necessary safety features: grab bars disguised as decorative molding, wider doorways that accommodated mobility devices without looking institutional, smart home features that could be customized to each resident's needs. Jerome met me in the lobby, his usual calm demeanor brightened by genuine enthusiasm. "Betty, wait until you see what the architects have come up with based on your concepts. It's revolutionary. Nothing like the standard senior living designs we usually see." We walked together to the conference room, discussing budget considerations and potential funding sources. The scholarship created from Amanda and Richard's donation had generated unexpected positive publicity, attracting interest from several local businesses looking to support Pinecrest's expansion. "It's ironic," Jerome remarked. "Your daughter's attempt to place you here against your will has actually accelerated our ability to create a more dignified, autonomous living environment for our residents." I smiled at the poetic justice. Life has a way of reshaping our worst moments into something meaningful, doesn't it? The planning committee meeting exceeded even my optimistic expectations. The architectural renderings were met with unanimous approval, particularly the graduated living concept that allowed residents to remain in the same community as their needs evolved, rather than facing disruptive moves between different levels of care. "This respects the relationships people build," observed Dr. Reeves, our resident geriatrician. "So often we separate people based on care levels without considering the social bonds they've formed. This model preserves those connections." By the end of the meeting, we had established timelines for the project phases and assigned specific responsibilities to committee members. As chair, I would be coordinating these efforts, working directly with the architectural firm and overseeing the integration of design and programming elements. As the meeting concluded and committee members gathered their materials, Eleanor approached me with an unexpected proposal. "Betty, the local news station has requested an interview about our expansion project. They're particularly interested in the affordable housing component. Would you be willing to speak with them as committee chair?" The request caught me off guard. I'd never been comfortable in the spotlight, preferring to work behind the scenes. But I also recognized the opportunity to highlight an issue that mattered deeply to me. "Are you sure I'm the right person?" I asked. "You're the board chair. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to do it?" Eleanor shook her head. "This project is your vision, Betty. You speak about it with a passion and clarity that resonates with people. Besides," she added with a knowing smile, "your personal experience gives you unique credibility on issues of senior autonomy and dignity." Put that way, I could hardly refuse. "All right," I agreed. "When would they like to do this interview?" "Tomorrow afternoon, if that works for your schedule. They want to film here at Pinecrest, showing some of our current facilities and discussing the plans for expansion." I nodded, already mentally rearranging my plans for the next day. "I'll be here, and I'll make sure to review all our talking points before then." As I drove home, I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. The interview would make the project more visible, and by extension, make me more visible. Amanda would almost certainly see it, possibly triggering another confrontation. But I refused to let that possibility deter me from advocating for something I believed in deeply. When I arrived home, I found a package on my front porch, a large, flat parcel wrapped in brown paper. Curious, I carried it inside and opened it to find a framed architectural rendering of Pinecrest's proposed new wing, with a note from Jerome. "Thought you might like to have the first official image of your vision taking shape. With gratitude for your leadership, Jerome." The gesture touched me deeply. I placed the framed rendering on my living room wall, where I could see it daily, a tangible reminder that even in the midst of personal difficulties, I was contributing to something meaningful that would outlast whatever tensions existed with Amanda. That evening, I received a call from Vivian Palmer. Her tone was characteristically brisk, but there was an undercurrent of warmth that still surprised me. "Betty, I wanted to let you know that I spoke with Gabriela Torres. She mentioned your meeting went well." "Yes, very well," I confirmed. "She had some excellent suggestions for additional legal protections. Thank you for recommending her." "Good." Vivian paused before continuing. "I also wanted to inform you that Amanda and Richard came to dinner last night. They mentioned they were considering taking legal action to have you declared incompetent." My hand tightened around the phone. "On what grounds? I'm clearly capable of managing my own affairs." "Obviously," Vivian said dryly, "which is exactly what I told them. I made it abundantly clear that if they pursued such a baseless claim, they would do so without my support, financial or otherwise. The implication was clear. Vivian wielded significant influence over her son, and by extension, over Amanda. Her opposition to their plans would likely force them to reconsider. "I appreciate your intervention," I said carefully, still somewhat bemused by the alliance that had formed between us. "It wasn't entirely selfless," Vivian replied. "As I said before, I have no interest in seeing a precedent established that adult children can arbitrarily seize control from their parents based on age alone. Besides," she added with unexpected candor, "I've come to respect your resilience. Betty, you've handled this situation with more grace than most would manage." Coming from Vivian Palmer, this constituted high praise indeed. After we hung up, I sat thinking about the strange twists life sometimes takes. How an adversary can become an ally when circumstances align in unexpected ways. The next morning, I prepared carefully for the interview, selecting a professional outfit and reviewing key points about the expansion project. I wanted to be articulate and persuasive, focusing on the benefits to the community rather than my personal situation. When I arrived at Pinecrest, the news crew was already setting up in the garden courtyard, a cameraman adjusting his equipment while a young woman with a microphone reviewed her notes. Jerome introduced me to Jessica Chen, the reporter who would be conducting the interview. "Mrs. Smith, it's a pleasure to meet you," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard wonderful things about the work you're doing here at Pinecrest." "Thank you, but it's very much a team effort," I responded, gesturing toward Jerome and Eleanor, who had just joined us. Jessica smiled. "Of course, but from what I understand, you're the driving force behind the innovative approach in the new wing. I'd love to hear more about that." The interview began with general questions about Pinecrest's history and mission, gradually focusing on the expansion project and its unique features. I explained the graduated living concept, the affordable housing component, and the emphasis on resident autonomy and dignity. "What inspired this particular vision?" Jessica asked. "It seems quite different from traditional senior living models." I took a deep breath, considering how much of my personal experience to share. Throughout my 15 years on the Pinecrest board, I've observed that the most successful transitions to assisted living occur when individuals maintain a sense of control over their environment and daily decisions. Too often, our society equates aging with incompetence, making decisions for older adults rather than with them. Jessica nodded encouragingly. "And this approach seeks to change that paradigm?" "Exactly. The new wing is designed to provide support without sacrificing independence. Residents will have access to the help they need, but on their own terms. We're creating spaces that adapt to people, rather than forcing people to adapt to institutional environments." The interview continued for about 20 minutes, covering funding sources, timeline for completion, and the potential impact on the broader community. As we wrapped up, Jessica asked one final question. "Mrs. Smith, you speak so passionately about maintaining autonomy in later life. What would you say to families struggling with these transitions?" I chose my words carefully, aware that my response might reach Amanda. "I'd say that love and concern should never be used to justify control. Supporting an aging parent means respecting their wishes, even when those wishes differ from what you might choose for them. It means offering help without imposing it. And most importantly, it means recognizing that aging doesn't diminish a person's right to self-determination." After the camera stopped rolling, Jessica thanked me warmly. "That was excellent, Mrs. Smith. Your insights will be valuable to many families navigating these complex situations." Jerome watched the news crew pack up their equipment, then turned to me with an approving smile. "Well done, Betty. You were articulate, passionate, and persuasive. Exactly what this project needs." "When will the segment air?" I asked, suddenly, nervous about the public exposure. "Tomorrow evening on the 6 o'clock news," Jessica called over her shoulder as she departed. We'll also post it on our website and social media channels. I nodded, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. The interview had gone well, but I couldn't help wondering how Amanda would react when she saw it. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The following evening, just after the news segment aired, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera and saw Amanda standing on my porch, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her posture radiated tension. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Hello, Amanda. I just saw you on the news," she said without preamble, her voice tight. "You did this on purpose, didn't you? To embarrass us publicly?" I stepped back, gesturing for her to come inside. No need to give the neighbors a show. "The interview was about Pinecrest's expansion project, Amanda. It had nothing to do with you or Richard." She entered the living room, her gaze immediately fixing on the framed architectural rendering on my wall. "Right. Nothing to do with us. That's why you made that pointed comment about love and concern should never be used to justify control. You might as well have named us directly." "That was a general principle I believe in, not a specific reference to our situation," I replied calmly. "Though if it resonated with you, perhaps there's a reason for that." Amanda's face flushed. "So now you're some kind of elder rights advocate? All because we tried to make sure you were safe after your fall." "Is that really what you were trying to do?" I asked quietly. "Ensure my safety? By making decisions about my home and my care without consulting me? By trying to sell my house behind my back?" "We were worried about you," she insisted. "One fall could have been much worse if no one had found you in time. Then the appropriate response would have been to discuss your concerns with me, to ask what support I might need, to respect me enough to include me in decisions about my own life." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "Instead, you decided I was incapable of determining what was best for myself." Amanda paced the living room, agitation evident in every movement. "And now grandmother is taking your side. She's threatened to cut Richard off if we pursue guardianship. Do you have any idea how that makes us look to his family?" Ah, there it was. The real source of her distress. Not concern for my welfare, but concern for appearances and social standing. "Vivian made her own judgment about the situation," I said. "I didn't ask for her intervention." "But you're happy to accept it," Amanda retorted. "Just like you're happy to go on television, presenting yourself as this wise, independent woman while making us look like villains. Is that how you see yourself? As a villain?" I asked, genuinely curious about her self-perception. "Because that's not how I see you, Amanda. I see you as my daughter, whom I love despite our differences. I see someone who made a serious error in judgment but still has the opportunity to recognize that mistake and make amends." She stopped pacing and turned to face me, her expression a complex mixture of frustration, embarrassment, and something that might have been regret. "And how exactly am I supposed to make amends? You've changed your legal paperwork to cut me out. You're barely speaking to me. You've aligned all these people against me. David, Daniel, even Richard's own mother." "I haven't aligned anyone against you," I corrected gently. "I've simply shared the truth of what happened. How others respond to that truth is beyond my control." "So, what do you want from me?" she demanded. "An apology? Fine. I'm sorry we didn't discuss the retirement home with you first, but we were genuinely concerned." "Stop," I interrupted. "An apology that immediately justifies the behavior isn't really an apology at all. It's a defense." Amanda fell silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What I want," I continued after a moment, "is acknowledgement. Not just that you made a tactical error in not consulting me, but that you fundamentally disrespected my autonomy. That you saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be engaged with. That's the core issue here, Amanda. Not the retirement home itself, but the mindset behind the decision. She sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. I don't know how to get back to where we were. I'm not sure we can, I said honestly. Or that we should. The relationship we had wasn't really based on mutual respect. Maybe what we need is to build something new. Something healthier for both of us. And what would that look like? She asked, a note of genuine curiosity breaking through her defensiveness. It would start with you seeing me as I am, not just as your mother or an aging woman, but as Betty Smith, a person with work that matters to me, with friends and interests and goals. It would involve genuine interest in my life and respect for my choices, even when they differ from what you might prefer. Amanda was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on her hands. I saw you on that news segment, she said finally. You looked different, confident, like someone with purpose. It made me realize I don't actually know much about your life outside of being my mother. It was a small acknowledgement, but significant coming from Amanda. Would you like to know more? I offered. She nodded slowly. Maybe. Yes. Then, with visible effort, she asked, what exactly is this expansion project you're working on? I reached for the architectural rendering, bringing it over to show her. We're creating a new wing at Pinecrest that fundamentally reimagines senior living. Let me show you what makes it different. For the next hour, I explained the project in detail, the design innovations, the programming concepts, the financial model that made it accessible to middle-income seniors. Amanda listened more attentively than I expected, occasionally asking questions that suggested genuine interest. As our conversation wound down, she glanced at her watch and stood. I should go. Richard will be wondering where I am. At the door, she paused. Mom, I'm not ready to say you were completely right and I was completely wrong. But I can admit that we handled things badly. And I can see now that there's more to your life than I recognized. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of the harm done, but it was a step in the right direction. Thank you for saying that, I replied, and for listening tonight. After she left, I sat in my living room, processing the interaction. There had been moments of genuine connection amid the tension, brief glimpses of what our relationship might become if we both continued to work at it. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time since the confrontation, at Pinecrest, I felt cautiously hopeful about the possibility of reconciliation. The following week brought a flurry of activity related to the expansion project. The planning committee met twice, finalizing details with the architectural firm and developing a comprehensive fundraising strategy. The news segment had generated substantial community interest, with several local businesses reaching out to discuss potential partnerships or donations. I was in the middle of reviewing budget projections when my phone rang. It was David. Mom, have you seen the newspaper? This morning? He asked, an unusual excitement in his voice. No, not yet. Why? There's a feature article about you and the Pinecrest project. It's on the front page of the lifestyle section. They're calling you a visionary advocate for dignified aging and highlighting the innovative aspects of the new wing. I nearly dropped the phone. What? How did that happen? Apparently, the TV segment generated a lot of positive feedback. The newspaper decided to do a more in-depth story. David chuckled. You're becoming quite the local celebrity, Mom. Oh dear, I murmured, not entirely comfortable with the attention. I hope they got the facts right about the project. They did. It's a really good article, thoughtful and substantive. But the best part is how they describe you. Listen to this. Betty Smith brings a unique combination of practical wisdom and visionary thinking to her role, drawing on 15 years of board experience, and a lifetime of overcoming challenges with grace and determination. I felt my cheeks warm at the praise. That's very kind, but it's really the project itself that deserves attention. Take the compliment, Mom, David insisted. You've earned it. And speaking of earned recognition, Mary and I were talking. We'd like to host a small dinner party before our beach trip. Nothing fancy, just a few close friends and family to celebrate your new role as committee chair. Would that be okay with you? The offer was touching, but I hesitated. Would Amanda be invited? There was a brief pause. That would be up to you. It's a celebration for you, so the guest list is your call. I considered the question carefully. Excluding Amanda might deepen the rift between us, especially after our recent conversation had shown hints of progress. Including her might create tension that would overshadow the celebration. Yes, invite her, I decided, and Richard too. But make it clear that this is a positive occasion to celebrate the project, not an opportunity to rehash family disagreements. Will do, David promised. And Mom, I'm really proud of you. Not just for the Pinecrest project, but for how you've handled everything these past few weeks. You've shown incredible strength. His words warmed me. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot coming from you. After we hung up, I walked to the end of my driveway to retrieve the newspaper. Sure enough, there I was in the lifestyle section, photographed in Pinecrest's garden with the architectural renderings spread out before me. The article was indeed thoughtful, focusing primarily on the innovative aspects of the expansion project, but also highlighting my role in its development. One quote in particular caught my eye. When asked what drives her passion for this work, Smith reflected, "Every one of us hopes to age with dignity, surrounded by community rather than isolated by institutional walls. This project isn't just about building better facilities. It's about creating spaces where people can continue to grow, connect, and contribute throughout their later years." I hadn't realized how eloquently I'd expressed that sentiment during the interview, but seeing it in print clarified my own motivation. This work wasn't just a response to Amanda's attempt to control me. It was an extension of values I'd held throughout my life: the importance of autonomy, connection, and purpose. At every stage, the newspaper article generated even more attention than the television segment had. By the end of the week, I'd received invitations to speak at 3 different community organizations about senior living innovations. Eleanor was delighted by the publicity, which was already translating into increased funding commitments for the expansion. The most surprising response came from Vivian Palmer, who called to inform me that her garden club had voted unanimously to create a therapeutic garden space for the new wing, complete with raised beds accessible to residents with mobility challenges. The club will fund the installation and provide volunteers for ongoing maintenance, she explained. I'll be heading the committee myself. That's incredibly generous, I said, genuinely touched. The residents will benefit tremendously from having that connection to nature. Yes. Well, Vivian replied with her characteristic blend of practicality and unexpected warmth. Gardening has been proven to reduce stress and improve cognitive function in older adults. And frankly, it will be a welcome change from organizing charity galas where half the budget goes to floral centerpieces that die within days. I smiled at her candor. I look forward to collaborating with you on this, Vivian. As do I, she responded. Oh, and Betty? Amanda called me yesterday. She seemed different, less defensive. She even asked questions about my involvement with Pinecrest. I believe your conversation with her may have had some impact. That was encouraging news. I hope so. We have a long way to go, but any movement toward understanding is positive. The dinner party at David and Mary's home was scheduled for the Saturday before our beach trip. As the day approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. I hadn't seen Amanda since our conversation following the news segment, and I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from her at a social gathering. When I arrived at David's house, several guests were already there. Franklin and his wife, Eleanor and her husband, Jerome, and a few of David and Mary's close friends. Daniel and his family had driven in from out of town for the occasion. The atmosphere was warm and convivial, with conversations flowing easily among the diverse group. Amanda and Richard arrived about 20 minutes after I did. There was a moment of awkwardness as they entered, a brief hush falling over the room. But Mary, ever the gracious hostess, smoothly welcomed them and directed them toward the appetizers. I made my way over to greet them, determined to set a positive tone. "Amanda, Richard, I'm glad you could come." Richard nodded stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. "Congratulations on your project, Betty. It sounds innovative." "Thank you," I replied, choosing to take the comment at face value rather than looking for hidden criticism. "We're quite excited about its potential impact." Amanda's gaze moved around the room, taking in the various guests. "I didn't realize you knew so many people, Mom, or that they knew you." The observation could have been interpreted as a backhanded comment, but her tone held genuine surprise rather than sarcasm. "These are people I've worked with over the years," I explained. "Friends, colleagues, community members who share common interests." "I see." Amanda hesitated, then added, "I saw the newspaper article. It was impressive. Your quote about aging with dignity really made me think." Before I could respond, Mary announced that dinner was ready, and we all moved toward the dining room. I found myself seated between Daniel and Franklin, with Amanda and Richard across the table from us. The conversation during dinner remained mostly focused on the Pinecrest project, with various guests asking thoughtful questions about different aspects of the expansion. Even Richard contributed occasionally, his background in finance giving him insight into some of the funding mechanisms we were exploring. As dessert was being served, David raised his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to my mother, Betty Smith. Mom, your vision for this project exemplifies the qualities we've always admired in you: your compassion, your practical wisdom, and your unwavering belief that people deserve to be treated with dignity at every stage of life. We're so proud of you and excited to see your ideas taking shape at Pinecrest." "Hear, hear," echoed around the table as glasses were raised. I felt my cheeks flush with a mixture of embarrassment and pleasure. Thank you all, but truly, this project is a collaborative effort. Every person in this room has contributed in some way, through professional expertise, personal support, or simply believing in the vision when it was still just an idea. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Amanda approached me in a quiet moment. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about seeing you as a whole person, not just as my mother. I realize I haven't done that very well." "It's a shift in perspective that takes time," I acknowledged. "For both of us," she nodded. "Richard and I are still planning to visit his sister in California next month, but when we get back, maybe we could have lunch? Just the two of us. I'd like to hear more about your work at Pinecrest." The invitation was tentative but sincere. Small olive branch extended across the chasm that had formed between us. "I'd like that," I replied simply. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the evening, the warm support from friends and family, the professional recognition of my work, and most surprisingly, the subtle shift in Amanda's attitude. None of these developments erased the hurt of her betrayal or magically fixed our damaged relationship. But they did suggest the possibility of growth and healing, of building something new from the painful experience we had shared. The beach trip with David's family the following week provided a welcome respite from the intensity of recent events. The rental house was just steps from the shore, allowing for early morning walks along the water's edge before the day's heat set in. My grandchildren, Emily and Michael, were delighted to have Grandma Betty participating in their vacation, eagerly including me in their beach games and shell-collecting expeditions. On our final evening, as we sat on the deck watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Emily curled up beside me on the lounge chair. "Grandma, I saw you on TV," she said. "You looked really important, talking about that place for old people." I smiled at her characterization. "Pinecrest isn't just for old people, sweetheart. It's a community where people can continue to learn and grow and contribute, even as they need a bit more support in their daily lives." Emily considered this thoughtfully. "Like how Dad helps you carry your suitcase because it's heavy, but you still decide what to pack in it?" Her simple analogy captured the essence of what I'd been trying to articulate about autonomy and support. "That's exactly right, Em. The help is there when needed, but the choices remain your own." "I think that's good," she declared. "Nobody likes being told what to do all the time, even kids. Especially kids," she amended with a grin. "Especially teenagers," I teased, giving her a gentle nudge. She giggled, then grew serious again. "Mom said Aunt Amanda tried to make you move to one of those places without asking you first. Is that true?" I hesitated, not wanting to deepen any family divisions by confirming the story to Emily. "It's a bit more complicated than that. Sometimes people think they're helping when they make decisions for others, even though it doesn't feel helpful to the person on the receiving end." Emily nodded sagely. "Like when Mom signs me up for math camp because she thinks I need extra practice, even though I'd rather do art camp." "Something like that," I agreed. "The important thing is that Aunt Amanda and I are talking now, trying to understand each other better." My granddaughter leaned her head against my shoulder. "That's good. I like it when our family isn't fighting." "Me too, sweetheart," I said softly, my arm tightening around her slender shoulders. "Me too." As the sunset faded and stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I found myself filled with a profound sense of gratitude for this moment of connection with my granddaughter, for the loving support of David and his family, for the meaningful work that awaited me at Pinecrest, for the opportunity to redefine my relationship with Amanda on healthier terms. The betrayal that had seemed so devastating just weeks ago had transformed into an unexpected catalyst for growth, forcing me to advocate for myself more assertively, drawing me deeper into work that mattered to me, and revealing allies I hadn't known I had. It had been painful, yes, but also clarifying. Like a forest fire that, despite its destruction, creates space for new growth to emerge. As Emily and I counted the emerging stars together, I silently named my blessings: autonomy preserved, purpose renewed, dignity intact. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, with Amanda, with Pinecrest, with the inevitable realities of aging, I would face them on my own terms, surrounded by a community that respected my right to do exactly that. Returning home from the beach trip left me feeling refreshed and centered. The time with David's family had provided a welcome respite from the intensity of recent weeks, giving me space to process everything that had happened and consider the path forward, both with Amanda and with the Pinecrest project. The morning after my return, I woke early and settled on my back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the dawn light filter through the maple trees. My garden needed attention after a week away, but there was something peaceful about its slightly wild state, the daylilies stretching toward the sun, the clematis vine venturing beyond its trellis. My phone chimed with a text from Eleanor. "Welcome back. Major news to share. Can you come to Pinecrest this morning? Board meeting called for 10 a.m. Curious about this unexpected development, I responded affirmatively and began preparing for the day. As I dressed, I wondered what could have prompted an unscheduled board meeting. Perhaps there was an issue with the funding for our expansion, or maybe the architectural firm had encountered problems with the design. When I arrived at Pinecrest, the usual calm of the lobby was replaced by a buzz of excitement. Jerome spotted me immediately and hurried over, his expression animated. "Betty, thank goodness you're back. We've had the most extraordinary development." He lowered his voice slightly. "The Westridge Foundation wants to fully fund the affordable housing component of our expansion." I stared at him in disbelief. The Westridge Foundation was one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the state, known for its selective and substantial grants. The entire affordable housing component? That's nearly $4 million. Jerome nodded, unable to contain his smile. "Apparently, the foundation's director saw your television interview and read the newspaper feature. She was impressed by our vision for dignified aging across socioeconomic lines. The foundation's board voted unanimously to support the project." "That's incredible," I managed, trying to absorb the magnitude of this news. Full funding for the affordable housing component would transform the project's timeline, allowing us to break ground much sooner than anticipated. "There's more," Jerome added as we walked toward the boardroom. "The grant comes with one condition. They want you to serve as the public face of the project, including speaking at their annual gala next month. Their director was particularly moved by your personal advocacy for senior autonomy." This additional requirement gave me pause. While I'd become more comfortable with the public aspects of my role, the idea of speaking at a high-profile gala was intimidating. Still, if it meant securing such substantial funding for a project I believed in deeply, I could hardly refuse. "I'd be honored," I told Jerome, "though I'll need some coaching before addressing their gala audience." "Of course. Eleanor has already suggested we work with a communications consultant to prepare you. Nothing major, just some tips for public speaking and handling media inquiries, since there's likely to be increased interest in the project now." As we entered the boardroom, the excited murmurs of conversation fell silent. Eleanor rose from her seat at the head of the table, her dignified demeanor barely containing her evident excitement. "Betty, welcome back. As you've likely heard from Jerome, we've received extraordinary news during your absence." She gestured to an elegantly dressed woman seated beside her. "This is Catherine Westridge, director of the Westridge Foundation." I recognized her immediately from the newspaper's society pages. Catherine Westridge was not only the foundation's director, but also a member of one of the city's oldest and wealthiest families. Her presence at our board meeting underscored the significance of this development. Catherine stood and extended her hand. "Mrs. Smith, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. Your advocacy for dignified aging has struck a chord with our foundation." "Thank you, Ms. Westridge. I'm humbled by your foundation's interest in our project." "Please, call me Catherine." Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct and appraising. "And there's no need for humility. Your vision for reimagining senior living aligns perfectly with our mission to support innovative community solutions. We're not just writing a check, we're investing in a model we believe can transform how our society approaches aging." The meeting proceeded with a detailed discussion of the grant terms, timeline for fund disbursement, and the Foundation's expectations regarding public recognition. Catherine made it clear that while the Foundation would be acknowledged as the primary funder for the affordable housing component, they wanted Pinecrest, and me specifically, to remain the public face of the project. "Your authenticity is what makes this compelling," she explained. "You speak about these issues not as abstract concepts, but as lived realities. That resonates with people in a way that institutional messaging simply cannot." By the end of the meeting, we had established a framework for moving forward with the accelerated timeline. The architectural firm would finalize their designs within the month, with groundbreaking scheduled for early fall, nearly 6 months sooner than we'd originally planned. As the meeting concluded and board members began to disperse, Catherine approached me again. "Betty, I was wondering if you might join me for lunch. There's another aspect of this project I'd like to discuss with you privately." Intrigued, I agreed, and soon found myself seated across from Catherine at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of establishment I rarely frequented, but where she was clearly a regular, greeted by name and shown to her table without delay. After we ordered, Catherine got straight to the point. Betty, beyond the funding for the physical structure, the Westridge Foundation is interested in establishing an ongoing program within the new wing, an advocacy and education initiative focused on elder rights and autonomy. That sounds wonderful, I responded, genuinely excited by the possibility. What exactly did you have in mind? A center that would provide resources for seniors navigating healthcare and housing decisions, legal workshops on protecting one's autonomy, training for healthcare providers on respecting patient agency, essentially, addressing the very issues you've spoken so eloquently about in your interviews. I nodded, already envisioning how such a center could serve the community. That would be an invaluable resource, especially for those without family support or financial means to hire advisors. Exactly. Catherine leaned forward slightly, and we'd like you to direct it. The offer caught me completely off guard. Me? But I don't have formal qualifications in elder law or healthcare administration. Catherine smiled. What you have is more valuable, lived experience, genuine passion, and as your work at Pinecrest demonstrates, the ability to translate that passion into practical action. The technical expertise can be hired. What we need is someone who fundamentally understands why this matters. I took a sip of water, trying to gather my thoughts. It's an incredible opportunity, but also a significant commitment. Would this be a full-time position? Initially, yes. Once the center is established and running smoothly, you could transition to a more advisory role if you wished. The foundation would provide a competitive salary and benefits, of course. She named a figure that made me nearly choke on my water, considerably more than I'd ever earned as a librarian. I'll need some time to think about this, I said honestly. It's a wonderful opportunity, but it would represent a major life change. Of course, Catherine agreed readily. Take the time you need, but I will say this, you've already demonstrated the impact your voice can have. Imagine what you could accomplish with the full resources of the Westridge Foundation behind you. As we finished our lunch, Catherine mentioned one more thing. By the way, I believe you know my cousin Vivian. Palmer? She speaks quite highly of you, which is unusual. Vivian's approval is not easily earned. The connection surprised me. Yes, I do know Vivian. I wasn't aware you were related. Second cousins. We're not close, but we serve on several of the same charitable boards. When your name came up at the foundation, she was quite emphatic about your integrity and capabilities. Catherine smiled. Coming from Vivian, that's essentially a papal blessing. I laughed, thinking of Vivian's rather austere demeanor. She's been unexpectedly supportive recently. Life has a way of creating allies in unlikely places. Driving home from lunch, my mind whirled with possibilities. The director position Catherine had offered represented not just a job, but a purpose, a way to transform my personal experience into systemic change that could benefit countless others. At 68, when many would be settling into retirement, I was being offered the opportunity to begin an entirely new career. I decided to take the weekend to consider the offer, discussing it with my sons and reflecting on what such a commitment would mean for my life. But first, I needed to share the news about the Westridge Foundation's grant with the planning committee. I sent a group email outlining the funding opportunity and the accelerated timeline it would create. Responses flooded in immediately, excited. Congratulations from committee members, practical questions about next steps, offers to take on additional tasks to meet the new timeline. Eleanor sent a separate message suggesting we hold a press conference the following week to announce the grant publicly. By the time I arrived home, I felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. I made myself a simple dinner and took it out to the back porch, watching the evening light fade as I considered the day's developments. The Westridge grant was a tremendous validation of our vision for Pinecrest's expansion. The job offer was both flattering and intimidating, a recognition of the expertise I'd developed through experience rather than formal credentials. As darkness fell, I found myself thinking of Howard, wondering what he would have made of these developments. He had always encouraged my community involvement, proud of my appointment to the Pinecrest board even though it was unpaid work. What would he think of me potentially taking on a director position at 68? I like to believe he would have been supportive, understanding that purpose doesn't have an expiration date. The next morning, I called David to share the news about the grant and Catherine's job offer. "Mom, that's incredible!" he exclaimed when I finished explaining. "The Westridge Foundation is a big deal. This will put Pinecrest's expansion on the map." "It's certainly a game-changer for the timeline," I agreed. "But what do you think about the director position? Am I crazy to even consider taking on something so substantial at my age?" "Not at all," David replied without hesitation. "You're more capable and energetic than half the people I work with who are decades younger. The real question is whether this is something you want to do." I appreciated his confidence in me. "I think it is. The work matters deeply to me, especially after what happened with Amanda. If I can help prevent others from experiencing similar situations, that feels worthwhile." "Then you should absolutely consider it," he encouraged. "And selfishly, I love the idea of my mother being a foundation-backed advocate, making appearances at fancy galas." I laughed at his teasing. "I'll need to buy some more formal clothes if that becomes part of my regular routine." After talking with David, I called Daniel, who was equally supportive of the opportunity. "You've always been happiest when you're making a difference, Mom," he observed. "This sounds perfect for you." With my son's encouragement bolstering my confidence, I began to seriously envision myself in this new role. I made notes about initial priorities, programs I might want to develop, partnerships to explore. The more I thought about it, the more right it felt, not just as a job, but as a calling that had emerged from one of the most difficult experiences of my life. By Sunday evening, I had made my decision. I called Catherine Westridge and accepted her offer with one condition. I wanted to maintain my position on Pinecrest's board and continue chairing the expansion planning committee through completion of the project. "Of course," Catherine agreed readily. "The center and the expansion project are complementary initiatives. Your involvement in both will only strengthen the connection between them." We arranged to meet the following week to discuss next steps, including the drafting of a formal contract and the development of an initial strategic plan for the center. The press conference announcing the Westridge Foundation grant was scheduled for Wednesday morning. Eleanor, Jerome, and I met beforehand to review key talking points and prepare for potential questions from the media. The communications consultant, Catherine had recommended, joined us, offering valuable advice on message framing and interview techniques. "Keep it personal, Mrs. Smith," she suggested. "The statistics and technical details matter, but what will resonate with people is your authentic commitment to this cause. Share why it matters to you, and they'll understand why it should matter to them." The press turnout exceeded our expectations. Local television stations, the city newspaper, and several online publications sent reporters, creating a buzz in Pinecrest's usually serene community room. Catherine Westridge attended, lending additional gravitas to the announcement with her presence. Eleanor opened the press conference with a brief overview of Pinecrest's history and mission before introducing Catherine to announce the Foundation's grant. Catherine spoke eloquently about the Foundation's commitment to innovative community solutions, emphasizing the importance of dignity and autonomy in aging. "We believe the model being developed here at Pinecrest has the potential to transform how our society approaches senior living," she concluded. "And we're particularly impressed by the leadership of Betty Smith, whose vision and advocacy have been instrumental in shaping this initiative." When it was my turn to speak, I felt a momentary flutter of nervousness. The room was filled with reporters, cameras trained on the podium. But as I began to discuss the expansion project and its Importance. My anxiety faded, replaced by genuine enthusiasm for the work ahead. This isn't just about building better facilities, I explained. It's about creating spaces where people can continue to grow, connect, and contribute throughout their later years. It's about recognizing that aging doesn't diminish a person's right to self-determination or their capacity to lead a meaningful life. The questions from reporters were thoughtful and substantive, focusing on the innovative aspects of the design, the timeline for completion, and the potential impact on the broader community. One reporter asked about my personal connection to the project. As someone in my 60s, I've witnessed how our society often dismisses the capabilities and preferences of older adults, I replied. I've seen friends and family members struggle to maintain their autonomy in the face of well-intentioned but paternalistic interventions. This project represents an alternative approach, one that provides necessary support while preserving individual dignity and choice. After the formal press conference concluded, several reporters approached me for additional comments. I was just finishing a conversation with a journalist from the city newspaper when I noticed an unexpected figure hovering at the edge of the crowd. Amanda. She caught my eye and gave a small, hesitant wave. I excused myself from the reporter and made my way toward her. Amanda, this is a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. She shifted slightly, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I saw the announcement about the press conference in the newspaper this morning. I wanted to see what all the excitement was about. I'm glad you came, I said sincerely. Would you like a tour of the current facility? It might help you visualize what we're planning for the expansion. Amanda nodded. I'd like that, if you have time, I mean. You seem pretty busy these days. There was a hint of her old defensiveness in the comment, but also something new. A grudging respect, perhaps, or at least a recognition that my life encompassed more than she had previously acknowledged. I always have time for my daughter, I assured her, guiding her toward the main residential area. As we walked, I explained the features of the current facility and how the expansion would differ, incorporating more natural light, flexible living spaces, and technology that supported independence while providing safety. Amanda listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that suggested genuine interest. It's impressive, she admitted as we completed the tour. Not at all what I pictured when I thought of a retirement home. That's exactly the point, I explained. We're trying to move away from the institutional model towards something that truly feels like a community, a place where people want to live, not where they end up when they have no other options. We paused in the garden courtyard, sitting on a bench beneath a flowering dogwood. An awkward silence stretched between us until Amanda finally spoke. I saw the job announcement too. Director of the new advocacy center. Is that something you're considering? Actually, I've already accepted the position, I replied, watching her reaction carefully. Amanda's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? That's a big commitment. At your age, I mean. She winced slightly, realizing how the comment sounded. Sorry, that came out wrong. I just meant it's a significant career move at a time when most people are thinking about retirement. It is, I agreed. But it's work that matters to me, especially after our recent experience. If I can help other families navigate these transitions more respectfully, that feels like a worthwhile use of my time and energy. Amanda was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the flowering shrubs across the courtyard. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, she said finally. About how we handled or mishandled our concerns about your living situation. It was the closest she had come to a genuine acknowledgement of the harm done. I waited, giving her space to continue. Richard and I talked about it during our trip. He pointed out that if his mother, who is 5 years older than you, had been treated the way we treated you, he would have been furious. She glanced at me briefly before looking away again. It made me realize there's been a real double standard in how I view you versus how Richard views his mother. I expect Vivian to be strong and independent indefinitely, but I started seeing you as fragile after one fall. Why do you think that is? I asked gently, genuinely curious about her self-reflection. Amanda considered the question. Partly it's about money and social status, I suppose. Vivian has always had financial security and the respect that comes with it. But I think it's also about how I've perceived your role in my life. You've always been the caregiver, the one who sacrificed for us. I never really had to see you as a whole person with your own ambitions and capabilities beyond being my mother. Her insight surprised me. That's very perceptive, Amanda. She gave a small, rueful smile. I'm trying. I won't pretend I've completely changed overnight, but seeing you in this new role, hearing other people talk about you with such respect, it's helping me adjust my perspective. I appreciate that, I said simply, and I appreciate you coming today. It means a lot to me that you're making an effort to understand this part of my life. Amanda nodded, then glanced at her watch. I should get going. I have a client meeting this afternoon. As she stood to leave, she added, that lunch I mentioned before our trip. Are you still interested? Maybe next week? I'd like that, I confirmed. Text me some dates that work for you. After Amanda left, I returned to the press conference area, where Eleanor and Jerome were still speaking with a few lingering reporters. Eleanor raised an eyebrow questioningly when she saw me. That was my daughter, I explained quietly. She came to see what all the fuss was about. Ah, Eleanor nodded, understanding the significance. How did that go? Better than I might have expected, I admitted. There's progress, slow, but real. The day after the press conference, the city newspaper ran a front-page story about the Westridge Grant, featuring prominent quotes from Catherine, Eleanor, and me. The article included a sidebar announcing the creation of the Advocacy Center and my appointment as its founding director. My phone began ringing early that morning with congratulatory calls from friends and former colleagues. Even my book club, members who had been supportive but somewhat bewildered by my sudden public profile, expressed enthusiasm about this new chapter in my life. Betty, we always knew you were remarkable, said Martha, our club's de facto leader. But a foundation director? That's extraordinary. We're so proud of you. The most surprising call came from Richard, Amanda's husband. His tone was formal, but not unfriendly. Betty, I wanted to congratulate you on the Westridge Grant and your new position. It's quite an achievement. Thank you, Richard. That's kind of you to say. There was a brief pause before he continued. I also wanted to apologize for my role in what happened. I should have advocated for more direct communication with you instead of supporting Amanda's approach. It was disrespectful, and I'm sorry. His apology seemed genuine, if somewhat stiff. I appreciate that, Richard. It means a lot to hear you say that. Amanda mentioned you two might have lunch next week, he added. I think that's good. For what it's worth, I believe she genuinely regrets how things unfolded. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a moment, absorbing the significance of these gestures from Amanda and Richard. They weren't grand reconciliatory overtures, but rather small steps toward re-establishing a relationship based on mutual respect. That seemed like a healthy approach, acknowledging the harm done without expecting instant forgiveness or immediate restoration of trust. The following week brought a flurry of activity as I balanced my ongoing work with the Pinecrest expansion, committee and preliminary planning for the Advocacy Center. Catherine and I met several times to discuss staffing, program development, and the physical space the center would occupy within the new wing. We want to break ground on the expansion in September, Catherine explained during one meeting. That gives us about 4 months to finalize the center's design requirements and develop the initial programming plan. The center itself wouldn't open until construction is complete, but we'd like you to begin outreach and community needs assessment immediately. The timeline was ambitious but exciting. I started researching similar initiatives around the country, identifying best practices and innovative approaches we might adapt. I reached out to elder law attorneys, geriatric care managers, and patient advocates to gather insights about the most pressing needs in our community. Amid this professional whirlwind, my lunch date with Amanda arrived. We met at a casual cafe downtown, neutral territory for both of us. The initial greeting was slightly awkward, neither of us quite sure whether to hug or simply exchange pleasantries. But once we were seated, the conversation flowed more naturally than I had anticipated. "You've been in the newspaper a lot lately," Amanda observed as we studied our menus. "The Westridge grant is impressive." "It's transformative for the project," I agreed. "We can now include all the design elements we'd envisioned without compromising due to budget constraints." Amanda set down her menu, her expression thoughtful. "You know, when I first saw you on television talking about Pinecrest, I assumed it was some kind of, I don't know, revenge or something. A way to embarrass us publicly after what happened." "It wasn't about that," I assured her. "The project was important to me long before our conflict. I realize that now." She took a sip of water. "It's strange. I've spent so many years focused on my own career, my own accomplishments. I never really thought about you having professional ambitions beyond the library." There was no criticism in her tone, just a frank acknowledgement of her limited perspective. "I didn't necessarily think of it in those terms either," I admitted. "After your father died, my focus was on providing for you and the boys. The library job was steady employment with benefits, not a career calling. My community work, including Pinecrest, was about giving back, not professional advancement." "And now?" Amanda asked. "Now I have an unexpected opportunity to make a difference in an area I care deeply about. The Advocacy Center will allow me to help others navigate the very issues that created conflict between us." Amanda was quiet, for a moment, absently stirring her iced tea. "I've been thinking about that, about why I reacted so drastically when you fell and broke your hip. I think part of it was genuine concern, but part of it was also about control. About making the problem of your aging go away neatly." Her self-awareness surprised me. "That's very insightful, Amanda." She shrugged slightly. "Weekly therapy helps. Richard and I started going after everything happened. It was his mother's suggestion, believe it or not." "Vivian suggested therapy?" I couldn't hide my surprise. Vivian Palmer had always struck me as someone who considered therapy an admission of weakness. "I know, shocked me too," Amanda admitted with a small smile. "But she said something that really hit home. If you're willing to destroy your relationship with your mother over control issues, imagine what you might do to your own marriage." That was a wake-up call for both of us. Our food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. As we began eating, Amanda asked about the Advocacy Center and my new role as director. I explained the vision for the center, providing resources, education, and support to help seniors maintain autonomy while accessing necessary care. "It sounds meaningful," Amanda said when I finished. "And honestly, it suits you. You've always been good at explaining complicated things in ways people can understand. I remember how you used to help me with school projects, breaking everything down into manageable steps." The memory brought a smile to my face. "You were always so ambitious with your projects. That solar system model that took over our entire dining room table for weeks. Dad was so proud of that one," Amanda recalled, her expression softening at the mention of her father. "He kept it in his office at the paper mill until it literally fell apart." We spent the remainder of lunch sharing memories of Howard and the children's early years. Safe, positive territory that reminded us both of the foundation of love that had preceded our recent conflict. As we prepared to leave, Amanda hesitated. "Mom, I know things aren't fixed between us. Not completely. but I'd like to keep working on it if you're willing. I am, I assured her. Relationships evolve, Amanda. People change, circumstances change. What matters is that we're both committed to finding a new way forward that respects each other's autonomy and personhood. She nodded, seeming relieved. Maybe you could come to dinner next month. Nothing formal, just family. The kids would love to see you. The invitation represented another small step toward rebuilding our relationship. I'd like that very much. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Amanda surprised me with a brief but genuine hug. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said quietly. I should have said that sooner. Driving home, I reflected on our lunch. The conversation had been more honest and productive than I had dared to hope. Amanda was making a genuine effort to see me differently, not just as her mother, but as a person with my own purpose and identity. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was meaningful progress. The next day, I had a scheduled meeting with the architectural firm to finalize design elements for the Advocacy Center's space within the new wing. The meeting was productive, with the architects receptive to my suggestions about creating an environment that felt welcoming rather than institutional, comfortable seating areas rather than formal offices, abundant natural light, and flexible spaces that could serve multiple purposes. We want people to feel empowered when they walk in, I explained. Everything from the physical layout to the language we use should reinforce that this is a place where their voices matter, where they're participants in the process rather than recipients of services. The lead architect nodded approvingly. That philosophy aligns perfectly with the overall design concept for the expansion. We're creating spaces that subtly support without overtly controlling. Exactly the balance you want to strike in the advocacy work as well. As I left the meeting, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The expansion project and the advocacy center were taking shape, not just as physical spaces, but as embodiments of a philosophy I believed in profoundly. That aging should not mean surrendering autonomy, that support could be provided without diminishing dignity. That every stage of life deserved to be approached with respect and possibility, rather than limitation and decline. Driving home through the late afternoon sunshine, I found myself smiling at the unexpected turns my life had taken. A few months ago, I had been a retired librarian whose primary identity, in the eyes of my daughter at least, was aging mother, who might need a retirement home soon. Now I was preparing to lead a foundation-backed initiative, chairing an innovative building project, and regularly appearing in the media as an advocate for dignified aging. The betrayal that had seemed so devastating, Amanda and Richard's attempt to place me in Pinecrest without my consent, had become the catalyst for personal and professional growth I could never have anticipated. In trying to diminish me, they had inadvertently set me on a path to greater purpose and impact than I had ever imagined possible at 68. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone pinged with a text from David. Just saw another article about the Advocacy Center. My friends are impressed that my mom is becoming a local celebrity. So am I. Love you. I smiled, typing back. Hardly a celebrity. Just a woman who found her voice a little later than most. Love you too. Entering my home, the home Amanda and Richard had tried to sell without my knowledge, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for maintaining my independence, but for discovering new purpose and possibility in a chapter of life many viewed as an epilogue rather than a fresh beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, with the Pinecrest expansion, with the advocacy center, with my evolving relationship with Amanda, I would face them with the confidence of someone who had discovered her own resilience and worth. The woman who had nearly been sent to Pinecrest against her will was now helping to reimagine what places like Pinecrest could become, not last resorts for the marginalized elderly, but communities of dignity, growth, and continuing purpose. The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the opportunity it represented, to transform a personal injustice into systemic change that might benefit countless others. That, I reflected as I settled onto my back porch to watch the evening light fade, was the most meaningful response I could offer to what Amanda and Richard had tried to do. Not anger or resentment, but purposeful action toward a better alternative. 6 months later, I stood at the podium in Pinecrest's newly completed East Wing. A red ribbon stretched across the entrance behind me. The autumn sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the gathered crowd, board, members, donors, community leaders, and most importantly, future residents eager to tour their new home. Today marks not just the opening of a building, I began, but the beginning of a new approach to aging with dignity and purpose. As I delivered my speech, my gaze swept over the familiar faces in the front row. Eleanor and Jerome beaming with pride, Catherine Westridge nodding approvingly, David and Daniel with their families. And there, seated beside Vivian Palmer of all people, was Amanda, her expression a mix of pride and lingering amazement at the path my life had taken. The transformation in our relationship over these months had been gradual but meaningful. Weekly lunches had become our tradition, creating space for honest conversations that slowly rebuilt trust. Amanda had begun volunteering at Pinecrest, leading art therapy sessions that residents adored. Her professional skills found unexpected application here, and I watched with quiet joy as she discovered her own connection to the community. The ribbon-cutting ceremony concluded with thunderous applause. As attendees dispersed for the reception and tours, Amanda approached me, elegant in a blue dress I recognized as new. "Congratulations, Mom," she said, embracing me warmly. "It's even more beautiful than the renderings." "Thank you for being here," I replied, squeezing her hand. "It means everything to have family supporting this journey." "I wouldn't miss it," she assured me. "Besides, I need to check out the Advocacy Center. My mother is the director, you know," she added with a playful wink. We walked together toward the center's entrance, where its mission statement was engraved in elegant script: empowering seniors to age with dignity, autonomy, and purpose. The words captured everything I had fought for these past months. Not just for myself, but for every person entering their later years. The reception area buzzed with conversation as people explored the facility. Jerome approached us, champagne flutes in hand. "To new beginnings," he toasted, handing us each a glass. "And unexpected blessings," I added, my gaze meeting Amanda's. She nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. What had begun as betrayal had transformed into the catalyst for profound growth, both personal and professional. The daughter who once tried to institutionalize me now stood as my ally in advocating for elder autonomy. Later, as the celebration wound down, I found a quiet moment alone in my office at the Advocacy Center. Photos lined the shelves, not just family pictures, but images from groundbreaking, press conferences, and planning meetings. A journey documented in smiling faces and construction milestones. A soft knock interrupted my reflection. Amanda stood in the doorway, holding a small gift bag. "I wanted to give you this privately," she said, crossing to my desk. Inside the bag was a framed photograph I'd never seen. Howard and me at a library fundraiser decades ago, my expression animated as I described some forgotten passion project to the person behind the camera. "I found it while cleaning out some old boxes," Amanda explained. "You looked exactly then how you look now when you talk about this place, completely alive with purpose. I never made the connection before, but it was always there." Tears pricked my eyes as I studied the image. "Your father always supported my community work, even when it meant more responsibilities at home for him." "He would be incredibly proud of you," Amanda said softly. "As am I." The words washed over me like a benediction, healing wounds I hadn't realized still ached. "I have something for you too," I said, retrieving an envelope from my desk drawer. "It's not quite as meaningful as your gift, but..." Amanda opened it to find 2 tickets to the governor's annual charity ball, where I would be receiving a community leadership award the following month. I'd be honored if you would attend as my guest, I explained. Richard, too, of course. Her eyes widened. Mom, these are impossible to get. How did you— Being on the board of the Westridge Foundation has its perks, I said with a small smile. Catherine insisted I accept the nomination, though public recognition was never my goal. Of course I'll come, Amanda assured me, tucking the tickets carefully into her purse. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. As we walked together toward the parking lot, the setting sun cast long shadows across Pinecrest's beautifully landscaped grounds. Residents strolled the walking paths, or chatted on benches, their faces animated with conversation. You know, Amanda said thoughtfully, when I tried to place you here, I thought I was doing what was best for you. I couldn't see that you were perfectly capable of determining that for yourself. And now? I prompted. Now I understand that love without respect isn't really love at all. It's control disguised as concern. She hesitated before adding, Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. I squeezed her hand gently. You're my daughter. That never changed, even when everything else did. At my car, we embraced once more. Same? Time next week for lunch? Amanda confirmed. I'll be there, I promised. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on life's unexpected turns. What Amanda and Richard had intended as an end, placing me in a retirement home without my consent, had instead become a beginning. The betrayal that might have broken me had instead revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed and opened, doors I never imagined walking through. My house welcomed me home with familiar comfort, the same house they had tried to sell without my knowledge. I settled on my back porch with a cup of tea, watching fireflies begin their evening dance in the garden. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, programs to develop at the Advocacy Center, residents to welcome at Pinecrest, community workshops to plan. But tonight, I savored this moment of completion. The journey from betrayal to triumph hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been hurt and anger, legal battles and public confrontations. Yet here at the end of it all was something I hadn't expected to find. Peace. Not just with Amanda, but within myself. A bone-deep certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The woman who had nearly been confined to Pinecrest against her will was now helping to transform it and places like it across the state. The mother who had been dismissed as incapable was now leading a foundation initiative on elder autonomy. The betrayal meant to diminish me had instead revealed my true capacity and calling. As darkness fell completely and stars appeared overhead, I lifted my teacup in a silent toast to second acts, to unexpected allies, to the power of standing firm in one's own truth. And most of all, to the discovery that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually just the beginning of something far more beautiful than we ever dared imagine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.